Snow fell in sheets, whispering across the tundra like ghosts of the fallen. Beneath a fractured aurora, a lone figure trudged through the white wasteland, his breath crystallizing in the bitter air. The man was known to few, and feared by the fewer who survived meeting him. His name, his call sign, was Reaper. Wrapped in a torn, frost-stiffened cloak, he moved with the patience of a predator, his rifle slung low and his eyes veiled by a visor that reflected the endless ice. Every motion was deliberate, controlled. He wasn't running from anything. He was tracking. The hunt had lasted 3 days. The signal, a faint distress beacon from a downed reconnaissance drone, had lured him to this frozen stretch of nowhere. What he found instead were strange burn marks seared into the snow, the kind no human engine made. The prints nearby were worse, 3-toed, wide as dinner plates pressed deep into the ice. He crouched beside them, touching one gloved finger to the edge. Still warm. Whatever made them had landed recently. Reaper adjusted his rifle's sight, scanning the treeline. He didn't believe in coincidence. Not after Mars. Not after Delta Black. The universe had stopped being kind to humans a long time ago, and Reaper had stopped expecting it to be. He thumbed the safety off and began moving again, the snow crunching beneath his boots. The silence broke when the sky split open. A beam of pale light struck the valley floor, tearing through the storm clouds. Reaper dove behind a ridge just as the air rippled with an electrical charge that lifted the hair on his neck. From the light descended shapes, metallic, insectal, their limbs folding in strange, precise patterns. They glowed faintly blue in the dark, scanning the snow with instruments that hummed like tuning forks. Reaper steadied his breathing. He counted 5. They weren't human craft. Not any model he'd seen or read about. Their armor seemed alive, flexing subtly as though breathing. He watched as one extended a talon-like device, extracting something from the snow, some kind of biological sample. Then its head turned, and the beam of its scanning lens swept across the ridge. He froze. The air shimmered again, and suddenly, gravity felt wrong. A pulse hit him square in the chest, silent, invisible, and the world folded inward. He reached for his rifle, but his hands were already dissolving into light. When he woke, the air tasted of metal. The snow was gone. He was inside a vast chamber of cold, silver light, suspended by restraints that hummed with static. Around him, the creatures moved with mechanical grace, studying him as though he were an animal dissected mid-motion. Human specimen. One of them clicked, its voice translated through some synthetic modulation. Physical integrity, exceptional. Neural density, abnormal. Reaper strained against the bonds, his pulse steady despite the pain. "You made a mistake," he said quietly. The alien paused. "Clarify. You think you caught prey." He smiled without warmth. "You didn't." The restraint field tightened, and the alien emitted a sharp, vibrating tone, irritation, maybe confusion. Reaper let it. Every second was data, timing, rhythm, proximity. He was already counting. The implants in his forearm flickered to life, invisible to their scanners, dormant since his military days but still wired into his nerves. He looked at the nearest alien, eyes cold behind his visor. "I don't run," he said, voice a low growl. "I hunt." The restraints cracked with a flash of white light. One alien screeched. Another turned too late. The sound of gunfire echoed through the alien ship, sharp and human. Reaper was free, and the hunt had just begun. The chamber's alarm screamed with alien resonance, a shrill chorus that rattled through the metallic walls. Reaper dropped behind a console, his rifle braced against his shoulder. The weapon hummed with heat. The rounds weren't designed for this kind of armor, but precision compensated for lack of power. 2 of the slavers fell, their luminous fluid splattering across the floor like liquid frost. The others adapted fast, moving with unnerving coordination, their limbs twisting into configurations that defied human anatomy. He rolled to the side as a plasma bolt carved through the space he'd occupied. The smell of scorched alloy filled the air. His visor displayed shifting readings. Oxygen mix, gravity fluctuations, electromagnetic distortion. The ship was alive in its own way, a living machine that pulsed with rhythm. He was deep inside it, far from anything familiar, and he couldn't afford panic. Panic was for people who expected rescue. He picked off another alien, the recoil steady in his grip. The shot blew out what passed for its sensory organ, and the creature collapsed in spasms. But for every one he felled, two more emerged, unfolding from the walls like shadows given form. They didn't bleed like anything natural. They shimmered, their forms momentarily blurring before stabilizing again. Reaper ducked behind a crystalline structure that pulsed faintly. The hum it emitted matched the rhythm of the restraints that had held him. Power source, maybe. He tore a charge from his belt, one of the few tools the slavers hadn't detected, and slapped it onto the base. The explosion tore through the chamber, bathing everything in blue fire. He didn't look back. He sprinted through the wreckage, cloak whipping behind him, and slammed his shoulder into a door panel. It hissed open to reveal a narrow corridor lined with translucent conduits that carried streams of light. They pulsed faster as he moved, as though aware of his presence. He could feel the ship reacting, adjusting its heartbeat to track him. Specimen attempting escape. A voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere. It was calm, unfeeling. Containment protocols engaged. Reaper's visor flared with a directional warning. A shimmering barrier snapped into existence ahead. He dove through a maintenance hatch to the right, landing hard in a chamber filled with suspended glass pods. Inside each floated a body, humanoid but not human. Some wore remnants of uniforms, others armor that looked centuries old. All shared the same lifeless stillness. He stopped beside one pod and stared. The figure within had human proportions, but its eyes, closed behind translucent lids, were faintly luminous. A label glowed beneath it in alien glyphs. He couldn't read the language, but the numbers caught his attention. December 12th, 43. A date format, older than recorded human space travel. He swallowed the realization. They've been collecting for a long time. The ship's voice sounded again, colder now. Subject Reaper, cease resistance. Compliance will preserve life. He almost laughed. You don't know what that means, do you? He found an access panel near the pods and pried it open with his knife. Inside, cables pulsed with that same liquid light. He reached for his wrist implant, connecting its neural interface. The HUD flickered as data flooded his vision. Schematics, security paths, environmental systems. The ship was vast, but he saw what he needed. A central neural core, likely controlling everything. He memorized the path. He didn't need to destroy the ship yet. He needed leverage. Behind him, one of the pods cracked open. A hiss escaped, followed by the slow exhale of something waking. Reaper spun, weapon ready. Inside the pod, the luminous-eyed figure stirred, its chest rising for the first time in centuries. Its eyes opened, cold blue aware. Human, it whispered, the word fractured by disuse. You broke the chain. Reaper tightened his grip, then helped me break the rest. The ship trembled as internal systems rerouted, corridors sealing and reopening with mechanical indifference. Reaper moved fast, the newly awakened captive keeping pace beside him with surprising grace. The being was taller than him, its movements stiff but purposeful, as if muscle memory outpaced conscious thought. It glanced around with restrained fury, luminous eyes reflecting the ship's cold light. They took us between wars, the being said while they ran. When we were tired, when we were scattered. Reaper listened without slowing. You've been here a long time. Long enough to learn fear, it replied. Not of death, of forgetting. The ship's voice returned, louder now, threaded with distortion. Crew casualties exceed acceptable parameters. Initiating escalation. The lights dimmed. Gravity lurched sideways, then corrected. Reaper grabbed a rail, boots magnetizing just in time. Down the corridor ahead, armored forms unfolded from recessed panels, heavier than the ones before. These moved slower, but their weapons glowed with contained violence. Stay behind me, Reaper said. The being shook its head. I will not be caged again. It raised its hand, fingers spreading unnaturally wide. The air rippled, and one of the advancing slavers convulsed mid-step, its armor crumpling inward as if crushed by invisible pressure. The others hesitated, recalculating. Reaper used the pause, firing controlled bursts that shattered joints and sensory nodes. They advanced together, a brutal symmetry of human precision and alien wrath. With each step, the ship seemed to grow angrier. Bulkheads slammed shut behind them. The floor vibrated with distant impacts, countermeasures deploying, drones launching, systems cannibalizing power wherever they could. As they reached a junction overlooking a massive chamber, Reaper slowed. At its center pulsed a colossal structure, an organic lattice fused with machinery, threads of light weaving in and out like a neural storm. The core. He felt it more than saw it, a pressure behind his eyes, as if the ship were aware of his gaze. The being beside him stiffened. "This is where it thinks," it said, "and where it listens." The ship spoke again, no longer pretending calm. Designation Reaper confirmed. Historical analysis complete. Reaper felt a flicker of something like satisfaction. About time. Human military designation, the voice continued. Associated outcomes, planetary sterilization events, total force collapse, extinction level, psychological impact. The being looked at him sharply. "They know you. They know the stories," Reaper said. "That's not the same thing." Defense platforms rose from the chamber floor, swiveling toward them. Energy gathered, bright and lethal. Reaper checked his ammo count, then stepped forward into open space. He wanted them focused on him. He wanted fear centralized. "Listen carefully," he said, voice amplified by the chamber's acoustics. "You didn't take a soldier. You took a cleanup crew. My job was never winning battles." The platforms fired. The being reacted instantly, slamming its palm down. The energy bolts bent, scattering harmlessly into the walls. Reaper advanced through the storm, firing as he went, shots timed to the rhythm of the core's pulses. "My job," he continued, "was making sure no one left to tell a different version." The core's light flickered. The ship shuddered violently, alarms overlapping in panicked disarray. For the first time, the voice wavered. Threat classification revised. Reaper designation, catastrophic. Reaper reached the edge of the chamber and planted a device at a conduit nexus, hand steady despite the chaos. He armed it, then looked back at the being. "You ready to finish this?" The being's eyes burned brighter. "I have waited centuries." Behind them, the ship sealed its exits, trapping them with the core. Ahead, the lattice pulsed faster, like a heart racing toward failure. Reaper smiled thinly. "Good," he thought. "Now it understands the hunt." The chamber shook as the device began its cycle, a low thrum building beneath the chaos. Reaper stepped back from the conduit, rifle raised, while the being beside him spread its stance, bracing as if against a coming storm. The core's light flared, threads of energy snapping and recoiling like wounded nerves. The ship screamed, no longer a voice but a vibration that rattled bone and thought alike. "You cannot dismantle us," the ship cried. "We endure." Reaper's visor scrolled warnings in angry red. "You mistake duration for survival." Defense platforms rose again, desperate now, firing without coordination. Reaper moved with practiced economy, each shot measured, each step placed where the floor would still exist a second later. The being struck with raw force, tearing apart mechanisms with invisible pressure, its rage no longer contained. It wasn't elegant, but it was final. The core pulsed erratically. Sections of the chamber peeled away, exposing void and stars beyond. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut, trapping pockets of atmosphere that burst and vanished. Reaper felt the gravity falter, then spike, then fail entirely. He anchored himself, magnetic boots biting hard, and reached for the being's arm. "This ship's done," he said. "We need to leave." The being looked at the core, luminous eyes reflecting its collapse. "If we go now, we'll survive. Wounded but alive." Reaper hesitated for half a breath, then nodded. He understood that look. "Then we end it." They advanced together, every step against the ship's resistance. The core lashed out, arcs of energy tearing through the air. Reaper took a hit across the chest, armor screaming as systems compensated. Pain flared, sharp and grounding. He welcomed it. Pain meant he was still in the fight. He reached the heart of the lattice and drove his blade deep, cutting through conduits that writhed like living things. The being added its will, compressing the core inward, forcing its structure to collapse under its own complexity. Light exploded outward, blinding and absolute. For a moment there was silence. Then the ship began to die. Reaper was dimly aware of motion, of the being hauling him through a ruptured corridor toward an escape pod half melted by overloads. They slammed inside as the hull tore itself apart, stars spinning wildly beyond the viewport. The pod ejected just as the slaver vessel folded inward, consumed by its own failing heart. They drifted, weightless, watching debris scatter like ash. Reaper's breathing slowed, his systems stabilizing. He turned to the being, studying it in the pod's dim light. "What will you do now?" he asked. The being considered the wreckage. "Find the others. Wake them. Warn them." It met his gaze. "Because of you, we remember." Reaper nodded once. "That's enough." The pod's distress beacon activated automatically, its signal rewritten by Reaper's implant as it broadcast into the void. Not a plea for rescue, but a warning encoded in every known trade frequency. A record of what had happened. A name repeated again and again. The being tilted its head. "They will come looking for you." Reaper leaned back, eyes on the stars. Let them. Somewhere far away, slaver fleets would intercept the message and hesitate. Some would turn back. Others would press on, greedy or foolish enough to test the warning. Reaper didn't concern himself with which. He checked his rifle, calm settling over him like fresh snow. "I don't run," he said softly, more to himself than anyone else. "I hunt."